Hi everyone, Michael here from Mirrors of Consciousness and creator of the Orbifold Tarot and upcoming Arcanum X Tarot with another Cartomancy video. This time I wanted to look into suit combinations a little bit more. Last time we looked a little bit at suit combinations. I gave a few examples of suit combinations and the nuance of that in the context of yes or no. But I wanted to broaden that a bit into possible suit combinations in a more general sense. What suits certain suits together could indicate. So we did look a little bit at suit combinations in terms of the visual similarities and the visual differences with suits. So where the red cards have a floating symbol in the middle of the card, whereas the black suits, clubs and spades, have little feet. So the black suits are a little bit more grounded, whereas the red suits are a little bit less grounded. Maybe not up in the air, but a little less grounded or less tangible in a sense. One of the other comparisons we also made was between hearts and spades, where a spade is essentially a heart turned upside down. Which just makes me laugh at the cliche that a frown is just a smile turned upside down. But it's kind of true, because hearts are often not just emotions, but joy and love and happiness, and spades are often seen as sorrow. And so in that combination, if you see like heart, spade, heart, spade, heart, spade, that combination of hearts with spades can indicate an emotional roller coaster, especially if it's like really up and down. If it's like a high heart and then a high spade and then a low heart and then a higher spade and then a low spade and then a high heart, and it's just like, oh, a roller coaster up and down. So that could indicate emotional roller coaster. That's kind of the key word or key phrase I would think of when seeing hearts and spades together. It's emotional roller coaster. There are, of course, other meanings. It could be, broken hearts, because spades cut, and then the heart is no longer full if it's broken heart. Another potential kind of key phrase when seeing hearts and spades together could be change of heart. So it's not necessarily an emotional roller coaster, but it could just be a change of heart, like a change of mind, but it just could indicate that the feelings that a person has have turned. There's usually a reason for that. There's usually an underlying situation around that, which may or may not have to do with the person about whom those feelings have turned. Sometimes a change of heart has to do with whoever is having the change of heart. It could just be their change of outlook. And have nothing to do with the person that they're seeing, but it's just something else that contributed to that. And there's a whole bunch of other potential ways that hearts and spades could combine together, but those are just a few. All of this, of course, is really intended mostly not to give you like rules about, okay, whenever I see hearts and spades together, it always means change of heart, or it always means emotional roller coaster. It's not really about that, but it's just to start thinking, how do spades and hearts relate to each other, and how does that relationship, when they're presented side by side, how does that relationship affect the other, and what conclusions might I then be able to draw from that? It could also indicate like fickleness, or if we think again from the last video or recent video, that hearts are the warmest and spades are the coolest, then it could indicate fickleness, which again is kind of like change of heart, but fickleness is just hot, runs hot 1 minute, runs cold the next. Really into something 1 minute, totally disinterested the next. So it could indicate that duality. By the same token, in that sense, it could even indicate a bipolar situation. I think probably bipolarism is overemphasized, misdiagnosed by lay people, which lay people, unless you're a doctor, you can't give a diagnosis, but will often kind of do our kind of pop psychology kind of diagnosis and say, oh, well, that person's bipolar. Maybe they're not. I mean, maybe they are, but maybe they're not. But it could indicate that sense, that feeling that the person runs hot and cold. Then if we look at hearts and clubs, that combination, if we think like passion and work, it could be a work of passion, it could be art, or I mean any work that you're passionate about, but it could be like or a dream job, the kind of job where you're both emotionally fulfilled and it keeps you busy and it keeps you interested and enthralled in the work. And because you're enthralled, it allows you to be more productive with that work because you're so in love with it. It could also indicate this phrase that's kind of common or come into popular culture lately, emotional labor, where you're putting in a lot of emotional work for some other cause or for some other person, and you're vested in it from an emotional side, but it's the kind of work that the payoff is far in the future, or you don't necessarily expect a payoff, but you understand that it's worthwhile maybe for the other person or other people that you're doing that emotional labor for, to broaden their perspective, and there may be like a broader reason for that, but it may not be such a direct personal fulfillment that comes out of it. The sense of emotional labor is usually less positive and more that there's a cost to you, an emotional cost to investing that emotional labor. And yes, there may be a payoff and there may be some sense of fulfillment, but it's more at a cost. And people usually use that phrase in a generic sense that just to intimate, just to indicate that there has been a loss, that I've invested something and I don't necessarily expect to get it back, but just know that this has cost me something, and it has cost me something not just in time, but it has cost something emotionally. And so that might be especially the case in the order of heart and club. So if it's heart first and then club after, then that could indicate, because it's like the work is after the cost, the negative, the black card is after. So it could indicate emotional labor. Whereas if it's a club first and then a heart, it could be work of passion. So that's where just the order of those two cards could indicate very different meanings. Even though they're similar, it's still passionate work involved. One has a cost and one has a little bit more reward attached to it. Continuing kind of with heart combinations, because we're there anyway, hearts and diamonds could indicate a love of money, a love of success. a love of the superficial sometimes, again, with that idea of hearts, sorry, not hearts, diamonds being sparkly, the shiny object in the room. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can be in love, you know. I was watching, I forget her YouTube, Mindful Tarot, Lisa from Mindful Tarot, and she was talking about um, an Eastern concept, a kind of Zen concept, that the superficial has a depth to it, and the depth has a superficiality to it. So as much as we sometimes try to dig into the depths of our souls, there's a kind of superficiality to that, and that maybe it's not so important. Maybe the superficial is more important in a way. The day to day and just getting through life and is more important than delving the depths. And then similarly, when things are pretty, when things are superficial, when there is a superficiality, sometimes there's great depth there. It may not be discussed, it may not be talked about, but under the surface, there may be all this richness that's there. Just because it's untapped doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So that's just to say that love of money or love of superficiality, love of shiny things, we sometimes in spiritual circles put a negative turn on the superficial, but sometimes the superficial is totally fine, and sometimes we just need something pretty. It's fine. The reverse, where you have, like, say, so heart and then diamond could be love of money, love of success, love of superficial, love of shiny things. And the reverse, diamonds then hearts, could be that, oh, well, the success drew me in, or the shiny thing drew me in, but then I found that depth, or I found a connection. So that could be, I don't know, like finding love on Tinder, right? We're drawn in. I mean, Tinder, people don't read profiles first. They look at the pictures first. Then they read the profile. So you're drawn in by the shiny thing, the pretty profile picture, or the nice smile, or the pretty eyes, or whatever it is. Like, there's something which, even though if you're not thinking of it superficially, it might not be a model, but there's just something that's attractive. It's a shiny object, a diamond, that's drawing you in, and then maybe you read the person's profile, or you meet them or something, and then you fall in love with them. You know, we do this. Card readers do this all the time, where we buy a tarot deck because it's pretty. And then you start working with it, and you start using it, and you fall in love with it because there's so much in it. There's so much richness there. So that could be that diamond then heart combination. Diamonds and clubs are, in a way, a fairly obvious combination. It's like work and money. It's like profitable efforts, profitable work. Or investment. So if it's club then diamond, then it's you're putting in the work and here's the reward. So you're going to get paid for your work. Basically, that kind of idea, that kind of combination. Diamond then club would be an investment. Could be a financial investment, could be an investment of work, or it could be investment in a worker. So paying someone to do your plumbing, right? Instead of trying to do your plumbing on your own, if you don't know anything about plumbing, it might be a more worthwhile investment to take your money, take your diamonds, and invest the diamond into a club, into a worker who can do the work well, who can do the work for you. I'm sure there are many other potential combinations of or potential possibilities of that combination, but that's kind of the obvious one. The relationship between work and money. We're compensated through money or through financial gain um, that's our rewards, and the shiny object isn't necessarily an end, but it's a means, and the work is the effort put forth is the way to get that means toward sustenance and whatever you spend your money on. Again, of course, diamonds aren't just money, but there is that connotation between clubs and diamonds connoting business, effort and reward, work put in, and shiny things gotten. Diamonds and spades. That's an interesting combination because it could mean cut your losses. So sometimes if you have invested something, if you have invested your money, and you're not seeing much of a payback from that investment, if a spade shows up with the diamond, it could indicate, you know what, cut your losses, stop investing in this, don't continue to waste your money, but don't necessarily mourn that loss of money because you've already invested it, it's gone, just cut your losses and move on. That would be a case of diamond then spade. Similar, actually, if you had club and spade, I wanted to kind of save club and spade for later, but a similar idea, if you had club and spade, it might indicate cut your losses. If instead of a monetary investment you've put in, if it's an effort investment that you've put in, then it would have the same connotation. Cut your losses and just move on. So you've invested some effort, you've invested some work, but that's done. There's a spade, cut it, and just move on. If you had, let's say, diamond and spade and then diamond, it might indicate that severing ties with something will be more profitable later. My little detour into spades and clubs threw me off for a minute because I had a few other things that I had in mind about spades and diamonds, but that's what it is. It could indicate things like even mining, like effort, that kind of idea of chipping away at something to get the digging, right? Spades relating to digging. So dig up the gold, dig up the diamonds. So you may have to do some delving, some cutting also, some separating, but also some digging. So you may need to, for instance, something like if you want to sell a piece of furniture and it's in really bad shape, you might need to polish the furniture first and then put it on the market. You might get a better return for that investment by polishing it. So that that spade could indicate like kind of cleaning away the clutter, cutting things away to make it more presentable. Then that pretty much, I think, for combinations, that pretty much only leaves our club and spade combination, which we already sort of talked about. So cutting your losses, cutting of work. If it's like club and then spade, it could indicate that a job is going to finish, a job is going to end. And then the reverse again could be spade first and then club, could indicate a loss that you then have to double your work toward, especially if there is kind of a doubling in terms of the numbers. That, like, if it's an ace of spade and then a two of clubs, that could indicate having to double your work after the loss, or like 2 and 4, or any kind of pair of numbers that cause a doubling. You might have to double your efforts after a loss. And then in that sense that we talked about in a previous video of both black cards being grounded, both of them having a foot. That combination of spade and club could just indicate you need to be more grounded, you need to slow down, or you need to be more grounded, or you need to remind yourself of the tangible, the more earthly aspects of your endeavor or your situation. Maybe taking a rest, that foot idea. It's funny, in like music notation, a rest, a pause, if you're playing an instrument and say the flute has a solo, and then they stop and the rest of the orchestra plays, and then the flute has another solo later, then during the period of time for the flute, that the flute is not playing, of course that time is still marked because the rest of the orchestra is still playing, but on the sheet music for the flautist, it has a little rest, and the rest is like a little foot that like hangs down off of the bar of music. Those of you who are musicians know exactly what I'm talking about. So the foot on a spade or a club could indicate rest. If you've got both of them together, a spade and a club, that could indicate rest. And it could indicate cutting work to rest, cutting down on your work to rest, or working hard. If it's club first, working hard so that you can have a break and rest. If it's club, then spade, then rest. So those kind of things. So it's just really interesting to think of these things in different ways, looking at the shapes, looking at other connotations beyond the traditional cartomancy meanings, which, of course, if you want to learn those are valid, and you know, you can do very well in cartomancy just with those. I like to read in a way that some might call more intuitive, and it is intuitive at the time of the reading, but I really like to just think about these connotations and look at the shapes and just observe what are the visual cues, in that sense that diamonds, like I mentioned in the 101 video, the first 101 video, that diamonds have the 4 points that are going out, whereas clubs have the rounded edges that seem like they're coming together. If you had like diamond and then club, it could indicate you need to spread yourself out. You need to go out there. You need to announce yourself to different places and make yourself known, and then consolidate that and join a club, or join a group of people, or make groups of friends, say, especially if there's like a heart next. It could be like diamond, club, heart. Could be go out, invest yourself, invest yourself, but go out, spread out, like be those points of the diamond in going in different directions, try lots of different things, go in different social networks, but not just one, but like go in several, and then figure out which ones seem to be congealing the best for you. That's the club. And then form closer relationships with some of the people in that club, in that congealed, in that place where things are kind of congealing, then form closer emotional ties with those people. And so that's just kind of like an overview of how card combinations work and suit combinations work. And hopefully that was helpful to you. I'm sure I missed a whole bunch of stuff, but again, these aren't rules. They're more just to get you thinking about different ways to observe the combinations. And already I kind of gave some indication of numbers, of value, high or low. But we'll go into that a little bit more next. Hopefully the next video will be kind of an introduction of number without going into specific numbers, I don't think, maybe, but looking at value. So see you again next time. Get out your cards and play.